Welcome to Petrichor on the Rocks. I'm Mason. Atheists don't believe in God, but they should believe in the afterlife. Now, to be clear, when we're talking about an afterlife, a lot of people jump to sitting on the clouds, playing a harp, something spiritual, ethereal, intangible. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here is an actual life after death. You have life now, you're in a body, you live, breathe, and move, you die, and then after some sort of resurrection, you are brought back to do it again, presumably with a better body. Atheists should believe that's going to happen, and without first being convinced of God. Now, the reason this is true is simply because if I say the words, technology is advancing, you know exactly what I mean. Technology is going somewhere, it's advancing towards something, and the answer is yes. We've all witnessed throughout our lives that technology is moving towards our ability to do increasing things we want. And that's really all technology is. Every type of technology just increases our power within the world in order to allow us to fulfill our own will. We can express our desires more fully the more power we have given by that control, given by that knowledge created by technology. You know how to drive a car? Well, you're going to get there much faster than your ancient ancestor who had to walk. And the important part here is the resurrection and how that's going to happen. A few years ago, I talked to atheists about this, and they wouldn't really know what I was talking about. They'd be at best skeptical, and at worst, they'd just assume it was a conspiracy theory of some kind. But in more recent years, the proof has become undeniable. Our advancement in AI technology has created a situation where it's quite obvious where things are headed. These are large language models, and their only real function is to take a large amount of data and then crunch it down into something functional and usable. You train them and they compress this data into patterns. Now, these patterns are used as a simulation, and that's basically all they do. They simulate something that appears as though it is intelligent. But the ability to simulate a conversation with a language model such as ChatGPT is only the beginning. As these models get more advanced, they'll be fed different types of data in order to create different types of simulations. These simulations will then take massive amounts of data points and compress them into patterns that predict the future. These predictive models can do presumably everything that we can currently do. We try to predict the weather, and we have plenty of data points and observations of the weather, but no human mind and no current computer can calculate that data in any short order in order to become truly predictive. These AI models promise to do exactly that, allowing us to predict weather patterns and then eventually even predict long-term climate change and things like that on the macro scale. Similarly, we'll be able to model the entire economy of a nation or possibly even the world, allowing us to move goods around in a hyper-efficient way because the AI has already predicted where the maximal profits will be for producing various goods and where the need is, not to mention who is going to be able to pay the most, bringing the customer and the producer into alignment like never before. This massive increase in efficiency is going to allow us to have a whole lot of excess, ideally, or possibly just allow everybody to conglomerate a lot of wealth into a small number of hands of whoever controls the AI. But as these models get more advanced and predict farther and farther into the future, eventually we're going to have such a data-hungry machine that it's going to want to know everything there is to know about the world. Now, if you understand that the entire world is basically just deterministically locked, which means it's made up of a bunch of dominoes that must fall over and over the way that they always will fall, each of the atoms reacting to the next atom in line, then once we get a base of data for a certain set of atoms, the predictive power of the AI is going to allow it to predict the entire rest of the planet. Now, Earth is a relatively self-contained ball hovering in space, and so there's a limited number of atoms there. Presumably, in order to get ballpark close, you wouldn't even need the entirety of the universe. And just having enough data about the planet itself should allow for a self-contained simulation that accounts for any changes like meteorites or other particles entering the atmosphere in a relatively accurate predictive model. And once we have a predictive model of the entire world, it can basically just build upon itself, predicting exactly where the planet's going to go in the future in terms of macro and micro change. But if we can predict the future, there's absolutely no reason we couldn't then turn that backwards and begin to predict the past. And so if we can predict the entire past backwards, atom by atom, we can predict the lives of individuals right up to their deaths. If we predict the lives of individuals, knowing where every single atom is exactly when they died, there's nothing stopping us from assembling those atoms back together. Presumably an AI machine that's capable of modeling the entire world could probably help us create some sort of atom-to-atom body reassemble machine that allows us to resurrect the dead one-to-one how they were upon their death. Or, if you don't think that would be a true continuation, it may just be possible to search each and every atom that actually made up the person at their death, reassemble them, and then you've got a continuation that is completely the same atoms in the exact same place. Once a sufficient level of precision of this reconstruction of people is done, and there's no way to tell exactly what is required for that, be it biological reassembly or genetic regrowth or just the basic machine that'll just stack atoms on top of each other somehow. But once we have that technology, there's no denying that those who died will be simply reassembled. And again, this is completely devoid of any religious underpinnings. It's just simple technology going backwards on a model and reassembling people from the dead, which is exactly why atheists, though they might reject God, have no reason at all to reject the afterlife. As a matter of fact, it should be expected at this point. Now, once we do begin to resurrect people from the dead by simulating their entire lives, there inherently comes with that a judgment of their lives. And so resurrection requires that we determine who deserves and doesn't deserve to be resurrected, or in what state they should be once they're given new bodies and new form. And so even if you don't believe in God, there's still good reason to think that you will be judged based on how you lived your life once technology becomes sufficient to do so. Because of this, we're going to need to reconsider exactly what parts of religion is being accepted or denied, because maybe it's hard to prove God, but the afterlife is becoming increasingly undeniable. And the implications of this should be life-changing. All of a sudden, DNR means do not resurrect, and you'll have to consider exactly what happens to your body, because it may be more difficult to gather your atoms back together if you are scattered as ashes at sea versus simply buried in the ground. These things may matter on how quickly or slowly you get brought back to life. It also matters that if you're being judged, then you're going to need to be very careful how you live your life. And so now all of a sudden we have a future judgment, and this fact is redefining exactly what the difference between atheism and religion looks like, because now we have very good reason to believe that a materialist spirituality can bubble up and form right alongside what we currently have as a transhumanist movement where people are attempting to use technology to preserve their own lives. Now we may not even have to worry about life preservation if death really is just falling asleep. This should bring with it some stress that if people are judging you right now based on how you live and determining whether or not you should be resurrected because you're going to participate in whatever society they currently have, well, if they can just create you, they can probably create new life as well. And so if you want to be resurrected, you may need to worry that your way of living will cause you to be judged unworthy to be resurrected because you're not even as good as just simply creating a new life out of scratch. So maybe you don't like the idea of God. That's all well and good, but when the quantum future archaeologists are digging through the world simulation in order to look at and judge your life, then it means the actions you take here and now really do have a point and purpose. Now that has the potential to cure nihilism if you're going to pop back into existence in some future period, but it also means that you're being watched and judged right now. What you choose to participate will determine whether or not you're allowed to participate once things become better. So all of a sudden, atheists have a reason to worry about a resurrection. Now, this doesn't seem to be a problem for the religious, because the religious can just say, well, of course there's going to be a resurrection. Oh, it turns out it was physical and materially derived instead of some magic, glowing light that suddenly assembled everybody back together. No, turns out that it was just done the same way God did the rest of it. He created a world and he assembled it using mechanical material processes. But for an atheist, this really should begin to blur the lines between religion and scientific understandings of the world, because now we've got things that were predicted by religion mechanically coming true. Should you go all the way and start worshiping God just on the off chance that he's the one that will be judging? As a matter of fact, should you hope that he is, because presumably if it's the Christian God, he'll love you, whereas if just people of the future are the ones judging your life based on your value, well, they might not love you. They might just be looking for someone that's going to produce economic value or act properly. Personally, I'm surprised to not see more atheists talking about this fact and worrying about exactly what the implications of future technology simulating that detail is going to entail. But what do you think? Should atheists worry about this technological resurrection? Should they form into some kind of pseudo-religious movement around preparing themselves for the inevitability of being resurrected by technology despite no God? Or could this be used as a cure for nihilism, an expectation of a life to come, even in the face of what they can't rationally parse as a God doing it? Leave a comment below if you have any ideas, or if you just think that this isn't going to happen at all for some reason. I'm interested to know. But as always, thank you for watching, and God bless you.